Hello, all, and welcome back to a new episode of Movies and Us, a weekly gathering place filled with conversations about movies, stories, and connection. My name is Jennifer Hahn.
And I'm Sarah Callan.
And today we are going to be reviewing the film H is for Hawk. So, Sarah, do you want to kick us off with a summary for H is for Hawk?
Sure. After losing her beloved father, Helen finds herself saved by an unlikely friendship with a stubborn hawk named Mabel.
All right. So let's do our one-sentence summaries for H is for Hawk. What is yours?
Mine is falling in love with a non-affectionate species.
Non-affectionate is the understatement of the century. Well done. My one-sentence summary is it's Mabel's world and we're all just living in it.
Honestly, though, go off, girl.
She's a G.
Go ahead, Mabel. I will do what you want me to do. I'm fine.
Right? I will listen to whatever you say
Yes.
as well. You command respect, and it is given freely by all of us. So let's maybe share our high-level thoughts about H is for Hawk. This is a film that I think isn't being talked about enough, and so I'm excited that we have the opportunity to get to review and discuss this film. It's star-studded, really, with some incredible acting talent. So we won't spoil this movie quite yet with our high-level thoughts about H is for Hawk. So Sarah, I'm curious, how did this film work for you?
Yeah, I had a good time with this. I think what really stood out to me is just like how grounded this film is and how real it feels. You know, this film tackles subjects around like grief and loss and depression and things like that, and it does it in a way that doesn't feel melodramatic or over the top. As I was watching, I kept expecting there to be, because there are some like pretty pivotal moments and things that Helen has to do, and I expected them to like go wrong in this really big way, or there to be this like explosive moment. And this film handles these subjects with such care and in a way that feels really grounded and true to life. And it would have been easy to make this film really over the top, really melodramatic, and it doesn't go there, while handling these really complex and difficult and human themes, I think, with a lot of care. And it's just cool to hang out with Mabel for a while. So yeah, I had a really good time with this. I had a lot of questions about like, how do you keep a hawk? Like, how do you get into this? Like, that is not a pet that I would have.
Nope.
But I had a lot of follow-up questions after watching this movie.
A risky but rewarding endeavor. I ended up really loving this film. I think in the first 20 minutes, I was like, "Oh no, I see what this is doing. I don't know if I can get on." I was kind of cautious at the beginning. I wasn't fully giving myself over to it yet, but as the film was unfolding, and especially in the third act, I fully trusted what this film was looking to do. And I think the approach that this film takes is so underappreciated because it doesn't make for big, splashy, emotionally heavy cinema, which is, I think, what we often go to the movies for, is for those moments of big feeling that's shown that heals us in some way. But I don't know, for me, actually, because of how restrained and subtle this film is, it actually spoke to me much more deeply. I really appreciate this approach to showing emotion in a non-loud way. It's a very quiet film. And if you listen to our top 10 of 2025 episode, 2025 was the year, this past year, of really appreciating these very interior, unspoken, quiet films that deal with a lot of big emotion in subtle ways. And H is for Hawk is like perfectly in that wheelhouse. And so this was a film for me. I also just felt so connected to Claire Foy's character Helen and how she processes and deals with a traumatic experience in her life. And I felt like I was like watching a version of myself deal with grief in this very specific way, which is delusion, channel everything into something that's really hard, because like that's a way to not have to face the big hard feelings that are really painful. So yeah, let's go raise a hawk. I think that's some crazy thing I would probably do, honestly, if I were to lose someone close to my life. And all my friends would be like, "Are you fine?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm really fine." And I thought that was so. She's such a relatable character in that way for me personally. So this one also like hit a little closer to home for me and made me do some self reflection as well as I watched Helen walk out her journey with facing this hard thing.
No, I felt the same way. I was like, "Oh,
I think
man,
you
I
too.
know that I have these tendencies too," and especially, like, avoidance. I'm really
Oh
good at
yeah,
avoiding things,
me
like,
too.
oh my gosh, yes.
Yes,
So, her, like, totally investing in the hawk, ignoring every other part of her life, I was like, "Oh, man, I
right.
do that." It was but I really appreciated, like, the understatedness though, because
Mhm.
it very much is a human thing to do, and it could have been melodramatic and over the top, so much so that, like, you get taken out of it or, like, the person becomes like a caricature, and H is for Hawk
Yeah.
doesn't do that, and just shout out to Claire Foy for giving
Oh
such a great performance. So she's so expressive a lot of the
yeah.
times without doing the big showy things. You know what she's thinking and she's feeling just because of how she's like moving, how she's responding
Yeah.
to Mabel. Like there's all of these little things. She's doing a lot of like little brilliant choices in her performance that I think really, really brings this film home.
Yeah. I think this film doesn't work without the subtlety and the nuance that Claire Foy brings to this performance. I completely agree. Because not that much really happens in this film, but it's in those small micro interactions that you feel these parts of Helen coming to life or being channeled in these different ways. And like Claire Foy's ability to take like on the surface is just her interacting with a hawk, but you can feel the presence of what that means for her. I think that makes her performance and all those little moments so much more meaningful and layered. And I think in the hands of another actress, this would have been a lot slower, a lot harder to get through, a lot more on the nose. But she brings the presence of layers without really showing us the layers too. We don't get to know, but we can feel that they're there. And I think, yeah, the way that she is able to bring that to the surface, but not fully reveal it all, is a testament to Claire Foy's genius in this. She's really good in this.
I also love that because Mabel is a hawk and she has chosen this animal to be her companion,
Hmm.
she has to remain calm. And there another character at one point says like if you're calm then Mabel will be calm.
Yep.
And so there's this almost like symbiotic relationship that this film explores between Helen and Mabel that I also think is really interesting. And Helen is trying to avoid and suppress and distract from this incredible loss that she has just experienced. And at the same time, she kind of needs to do that to care for
Yeah.
Mabel. Because if she is, you know, big and loud and all of these things, Mabel would respond to that and Mabel would be anxious and wreaking havoc and all of that. So I think that that's also an interesting complicating factor too is she needs to be calm. And I loved all of like the training sequences where she had to be calm. She had to keep it together even as things are
Mm,
going wrong in her physical environment. I think that that's a kind of brilliant pairing for
mm,
this animal she has to be calm around. So
mhm.
honestly, great distraction.
Yeah, yeah. Let's give a spoiler alert so we can dive fully into all of the different aspects because there's some interesting moments with other characters too that I think is quite fascinating in their observations about her relationship with Mabel. Um, so if you haven't seen Ages for Hawk, we recommend going to check it out. And this is a film that I think would be really quite magical to see in a theater as well. We both didn't get to see it in a theater, but I imagine that some of those sequences would be even more breathtaking to experience on the big screen with the quietness of a big dark room to go on this journey. So, this is your spoiler alert for H is for Hawk. So, I think it's really fascinating the way that she needs to be still in order to provide that security, that safety for Mabel. So many of the times in those training sequences, she's speaking to Mabel, but it almost feels like she's speaking to that tumultuous version of herself as well. And I thought that's a great example of Claire Foy again bringing the layeredness to some of those scenes. And it's not until much later on in the film that her friend says, I want to be just concerned a little bit and just aware that like I think you might be over identifying yourself with Mabel." And that's something that the film allows us as a viewer to already have come to that conclusion way back earlier in the beginnings of the film when we're seeing her calm Mabel down, but almost calming herself down too. When I'm sure her inner world is like running in 10 million different directions as she's experiencing her life literally being shaken to the core from the death of her father. And so I thought those were really powerful moments where she has to find that sense of centeredness for herself and for Mabel as well.
I love when she's with Stu and they're practicing, Mabel coming back to her,
Yeah.
and she's so scared and doesn't trust herself, and is doubting that they're going to be able to do it. And what if something happens to Mabel? Like, is this too far? Like, she's so
Yeah.
skittish and she's so timid in that moment. And I love Stu is obviously calm and in control, and as an outsider can like see the perspective, and he's just like, yeah, she's ready, and he tells Helen to be brave. And I loved
Mhm.
that little line. I thought that was so brilliant because he knows that this whole thing has nothing to do with Mabel, and it's just
Yeah.
Helen trying to work through these feelings without working through these feelings. And
Mm.
that requires bravery. Letting go and trusting requires bravery. And so
Mhm.
I thought that it's such a small, quick little line, but to me that was such an insightful and powerful moment in this film.
Yes, absolutely. And Stu is a fountain of wisdom. There's another moment later on that's very similar to that, that is so breathtaking, but the film, again, restrained, does not dwell too long or open it up to be this really cheesy moment. But it's when Mabel comes back for the first time after her first hunt successfully, and Helen brings the alcohol, the bottle of scotch or something to his home. And she's like, "Thank you for believing in Mabel." And he's like, "No, I believed in you." And that's it. And then the scene cuts and we're on to the next thing. But that hangs so powerfully in the air as we are on to the next moment. But yeah, it's about Mabel, but it's not really about Mabel. It's about her finally believing and trusting that she can do this hard thing that she thought was going to be too much or too overwhelming for her to be able to do on her own as well. And so that moment of joy, that moment of victory, I think is so felt for us as the audience as we see Helen get to experience like, I did it. She did it. And I did it too, I guess, because I was able to be there and coach and guide Mabel to this moment.
I love how much of this film introduces us to the people that are in Helen's orbit.
Yeah.
And, we spend time with Stu and his wife. We spend time with her friend, her mom. Like we see these other people in her orbit and how much they care for her and how much
Yeah.
there for her too, like her friend just coming over and hanging out, and even though Helen is late and she had to wait in the cold, it's fine, and bringing her coffee and things. And I
Yeah.
think that that is so important, that we see that she has a community around her. She has people that love her. And so then we feel
Mm.
that tension as she begins to pull away from them, and when she stops answering the door, like we feel the void of that, and
Mm.
we as the audience understand that she's taking steps backwards and like
Yeah.
regressing in that moment. And I think that at the beginning, setting up all of these relationships and seeing how important they are to her makes her pulling back the way that she does all the more powerful and heartbreaking. But then also,
Mhm.
when we see the people in her life continuing to be there
Yeah.
for her in those little ways, I thought was just so beautiful, and such a powerful depiction of what it looks like to live in community and to be able to like receive love when you're at your lowest, which is a really hard thing to do. But I think that
Mhm.
this film depicts all of those things really, really beautifully, and in such a human and real way, which I think makes them more powerful.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I really appreciate about this film is its depiction of depression. I think that so often films lean, again, so heavily into the big moments and like the big lows of depression. But in reality, depression feels a lot like what we see Helen go through day in and day out. That retreating into isolation, the fact that simple tasks feel really overwhelming to do, the neglect of the home and the cleanliness. We see her just it's too insurmountable to do those hard things. She's also forgetting responsibilities that she has, commitments that she's made. I thought the time when she does choose to go out and try and be social, and she's in that party, and it's like so overwhelming and like engulfing and like kind of suffocating for her. I just thought that that depiction of depression as this like lull into this like lens that is grayer, and those simple pleasures don't really aren't there anymore. And um even like when people are coming and trying to care, which she can feel that they are putting in the effort to, it feels like an interruption. It feels like an invasion into her space, into her quietness, that she just doesn't want to like interact with at all. Like her mom at the door or her friend at the door, she just is like, I just can't put on the face for them now. Um, and I thought that was really just impressive to see put to the screen in this really grounded way. As someone who's experienced depression before, that this felt really resonant, and I just appreciate that a lot, because sometimes I think films can kind of depict it so heavily in this other version of it, which is true, but this is also just as true as well. So I really appreciated that from the film as well.
No, I did too, as a person who also struggles with depression. And I was watching and I was like, "Oh, this is
Yeah.
really familiar," and
Mm-hmm.
now like understanding myself, going to therapy, working through things, like I'm able to like spot these patterns and things
Mm-hmm.
a little bit more, so that I'm able to maybe like choose a different path than I would have years ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, as I was watching her, I was like, I know exactly what that feels like. Like
Yeah.
I haven't experienced the loss that she has, but I have experienced that low that she's in. And I
Mm-hmm.
know what it's like to be in the low like that. And like you said, I love that this film doesn't dramatize it. I
Mm-hmm.
at the party, I expected there to be some sort of a blow up, and she reaches her breaking point, or there's some like external thing that happens, because that's dramatic, and
Mm-hmm.
that's why we go to the movies,
Yeah.
is to watch something dramatic. And I love that this film is like, no, we're just going to give you
She
the very
survived.
human and the very real thing, where you're in a crowd but you're not really there, and you're
Yeah.
just you're just surviving it,
Surviving.
and ready to go back home. And
Mm-hmm.
so I love how subtle this is. I know that this film won't work for everybody, but
Yeah.
I think it's such a powerful depiction of the realities of mental health struggles that people
Mhm.
endure every single day. And I feel like we don't get a lot of films that are this honest about
Yeah.
what it feels like, and inviting other people who maybe haven't gone through something like this to experience what this feels like instead of the overly dramatic version that we're used to getting.
Exactly. Yes. And I think that's why there's this tipping point at the like 20, 30-minute mark for me where I thought we were going to get the version of the film that we hoped we wouldn't get and we didn't get, which is she's experienced this loss. She forms this bond with the animal, and the animal heals her. And that is the movie, but it's not that version of the movie that has this catharsis, this breakdown, and then she goes and she does a eulogy, and it's this beautiful thing, and there's some like connection point with Mabel in there as well. It's not that at all. It's actually a much more somber view of what healing looks like. I thought about how Helen doesn't go from like pain to like catharsis or true healing at the end of the film. She actually goes from like avoidance and delusion to just honesty and facing and being brave to look at the hard thing. There's a whole another probably part of the like 2 3 phases of this movie that would go on and on and on, which is her going having to actually deal with and walk out the healing now. But actually this is this is the first phase, is just going from like I don't want to face this hard thing to I think I have depression. I miss my father terribly. Now what do we do about it now? Like that is the journey that our character goes on, which is much less sexy and exciting than seeing her go from like the breakdown and the tears to like and she's getting back on the horse again, you know? And I really love that this film chooses to scope the story to just this beginning period, which is often sometimes the longest period, sometimes the hardest period is to just face the hard thing and to not run from it anymore. And as a runner, I really found this to be emotionally satisfying for me. Maybe other people that like don't struggle with the same things and can quickly like face and voice their feelings would be like, I don't understand what just happened. But for me, I was like, wow, this was a win. She is willing to take a really somber look at everything in her life, circumstantially and emotionally, and just state them and voice them to other people too, you know, like her sharing with her mother about the diagnosis and the doctors is I was like, wow, I feel the weight of how much that took and the bravery required to even bring that to light. And I thought that was really neat and really beautiful. One other little detail that I loved about that scene is I think so indicative of how Helen is wired, which is to be so others focused, is that in that whole conversation, she actually apologizes because she feels like she's creating worry for her mother. And I was like, wow, this is such a glimmer into the heart that Helen has, which is like even when she is suffering, she's thinking about how it's affecting the people that she cares about most at her lowest of lows. And that wiring I thought was so interestingly reflected in that little moment too.
Yeah, I also love this ending because, like, physically and like circumstantially, she is in a really uncomfortable place. She's in a very difficult
Hmm.
place. She
Yeah. No home, no
no
job.
longer has a home. She has to move
Mhm.
back in with mom, presumably. She no longer has a job, doesn't know what we're doing there. And her companion, Mabel, has to go away now. And I love that like the circumstances are now difficult, but she has been changed by this
Mm,
experience. So now she's able
yeah.
to handle these difficult situations in a different way than she would have been able to before. And so
Mhm.
the external measures of success show that she has failed, but if we look at this from like an emotional and like human perspective, then this is a
Mm.
triumph because she has been able to be honest with herself and face these things. And I feel like that's how life is a lot of the time, like
Yeah.
you make progress emotionally, and you're having these like internal victories about how you see yourself and the world around you and how you're processing through things, but that doesn't automatically mean that the world around you and your circumstances will improve. And so
Mhm.
again, I just appreciate the reality and the humanity of it all to not be overly rosy with how this ends.
Yeah. Yeah. And she has now built the resilience and the conviction to walk forward again. And I think it was also really interesting to see the way that throughout the film we're constantly cutting back and forth into these like these memories, these moments, these reminders of time shared with her father, which I absolutely loved because I think that's actually really, again, reflective of how like these little tiny details will just like take us back to a moment with someone that we've loved, lost, whatever it is, you know, like that's really reflective of like the hazy nature that we like meander through our consciousness. And so many of the times that she thinks back to memories with her father, when we cut back to reality, there's so much pain and hurt that's on her face. But in this last scene, there's glimmers of joy. There's like a sweetness to her facial expression after thinking back to those times with her father now that used to just be painful because all she felt was the void. But now she's moving, she's made progress from that phase to beginning to honor, beginning to celebrate the memories that they had. And that is also transformation, that is also this emotional progression that she's made now that, gosh, we celebrate, we're excited. So yeah, again, circumstantially everything is really bad, but she's made progress to begin to walk out the healing with just how she thinks of her father and those memories that come.
She goes on the journey of Inside Out. And now her
Yeah.
little core memory balls are a mix
Yes.
because they
Yes.
went from pure joy to pure sadness. And then by the end, they're
Another
the
mix.
mix. So once again,
There you
Inside Out
go.
uh, is great. But
Uh-huh.
yeah, I love that moment. And I really liked that final memory between them. She says, "You dragged me all this way to look at a pile of stones," and she's so like frustrated about it. And then her dad
Yeah.
says, "It's incredible." And I thought that was also a really neat insight into how these two see the world, because again, I saw a lot of myself in Helen, because I'll see a thing and I'm like,
What?
that's it. Like, I'll be the negative Nancy of the group. And just the beauty and like having that moment of seeing these two perspectives and seeing
Mm,
how they saw the world so differently, and the way that Helen's dad understood her even though they saw the world so differently, I think
yeah.
makes that interaction even more powerful. I love like going and doing stuff with people who aren't like instinctually negative like I am, and then like talking with them about it and being like, well, this is what I noticed, but taking on their perspective to see the pile of
Yeah.
stones not just as like this boring pile of rocks, but this really incredible beautiful thing, and seeing how it creates and is connected to something larger. And so I think I loved that ending scene. I think that there was so much meaning in that, and then of course, like you said, with the mixing and the positivity at the end of it, it's just beautiful.
Hmm. Yeah, it's so good. And I think that this film is incredibly wise to know that that is what we often remember most about the people that we love in our lives that we've lost is it's the memories, but it's actually like a way of being. It's a way of existing in the world that is their legacy. It's their zest for life, his conviction, his like infectious, contagious energy to find so many things exciting and to take on these like ridiculous like tasks and challenges of wanting to photograph all the bridges along the River Thames. Like it's that truly changes us that we take with us into the rest of our lives. And for maybe her and her father, it's that what she shares in her eulogy around being engaged with life. But for others, like it's their kindness or it's the selflessness. It's like something about the way that they uniquely exist in the world that change you and you take a part of and you honor them by inhabiting some bit of that in some way. into all of the other people in your life with you. And so, in some ways, her choosing to take on this task of training a hawk and caring for a hawk is so her father too, and like something that he would do, some crazy ridiculous task. And when she looks at Mabel at the end there, I think there's that feeling of like, this is something my father would also just get such a kick out of as well. And there's something beautiful about honoring him and how she continues to be engaged, to care, to notice those things around her, and to just show up with like every bit of energy that she has, and to not disengage like she might be tempted to out of her pain and whatnot. So I think that's a really fascinating way that the film has showcased how we care for and honor the legacies of those that are lost. It's not just the memories and the stories, but it's also like their way of being that they embody.
Ugh, and he was just so like bright and lovely. Like casting Brendan Gleeson is just brilliant. I'm not gonna lie. I did want more of him, but
Too.
I don't know that we needed more of him. I think it was more of like he's such a fantastic actor and he's bringing so much like life and zest and beauty here. I just want more of him, but each of those little moments when we get to spend time with him, he is magnetic and you his joy is infectious. Even if you're just like watching this and looking at a screen, you feel that joy that he just like radiates out.
Mm-hmm.
And so if like I as a viewer am like, oh my gosh, I am enamored with this guy, I just want to spend all my time with him, I can only imagine how much Helen felt that. And then obviously like feeling that hole in that void that she seeks to fill with Mabel instead. But I
Mm-hmm.
loved all of those little flashbacks and those memories. I thought they were so intentionally timed and they were just enough to let us feel what she felt to help us better
Yeah.
empathize with her as she goes on this journey.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also really appreciate that a lot of the flashbacks are to smaller moments. And not big important conversations that they had and big heart to hearts. It's like her bringing tea out to him while he's mowing the lawn, but even though she should be resting. And I thought that was also, again, just so accurately reflective of how we remember people. It's like maybe there's some big moments in there, but it's like the little tiny things of cooking together or going out on a walk on a Tuesday. Those are the things we actually remember more than the big stuff sometimes. And I thought that was really intentionally designed to flash back to these everyday life encounters instead of the big moments when he showed up for her graduation. It's like we remember those things, but gosh, taking tea out, those are the things you miss most, is getting to go on your walks together, getting to like talk on the phone. That's it. It's as simple and small as those things.
Yeah, getting yelled at for walking into a crime scene to take pictures, just normal everyday occurrences. I also loved the one where they go to the school and he is being loud and boisterous and talking about her being a spy and all of that. Like
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was just it's so fun and funny and just so full of life and I just it's such a good emotional break for us as the audience too,
True.
but that is something that you would remember of just your parents randomly showing up and getting glares from everybody in the library because your dad is being too loud. Like that's just it's so fun, it's so human, it's so real. Like oh, it was great.
And it also feels so him. And I
Oh
think
my
that's
gosh,
like
yes.
so notable. And then like the moments she's remembering back to are like the times where they're just that person is being so them. Like nobody else would like pal around through and like go and try and take photos of the crime scene. You're just like, oh my gosh, you are being so you. And that's the most endearing thing. That's most memorable. That's most exciting to us is when we see the people we love just be so them. um, and we actually don't really see him much at all. I remember thinking like, gosh, this film is like starring Claire Foy and Brendan Gleeson. He's really not in the movie that much, but he packs a punch every time he's on screen, and his moments are so perfectly curated and timed. Just when it's been a little while since we've saw him again, we get just that warmth with him again, and then we have to cut back to reality. And I too felt the void of, I want to be back chatting with Brendan Gleeson, I want to be back there too. And so we feel that's that empathy moment that you were sharing about, with like us feeling what Helen is feeling, and the absence of that energy, that boisterousness, that playfulness, that just isn't there anymore.
And we also see that void in Helen too. You know, when she is with her dad, she is laughing and joking and having a fun time, and like very different than the Helen that we're walking through this journey with. And so I think obviously we feel that loss that she's feeling, but we also see and are aware of her own loss and how she is so different now that he is not there, and just figuring out like, how do you go on without this person who understood you and unlocked this part of you
Yeah.
that doesn't come out with everybody, you know? And so
Yes.
I think that
That's so good.
contrast of, again, Claire Foy's performance, obviously it's in the writing too, but being able to have that contrast of Helen with her dad versus Helen now that her dad is passed. And that is a very stark contrast that
Mm.
those memories really help highlight.
Hmm. Yeah, there's a lightness, a humor, a playfulness that he does draw out of her, and I think that is, like you mentioned, so accurate to the way that we are as humans too. There's sides of ourselves that come out more with certain people, um, for whatever reason, and when that person passes, it feels like, well, what that side of me that like no one else brings, that silliness that only he could kind of draw out of her. And I think it's notable too that in those flashback moments with her and her father, she is by nature more reserved, more grounded, more serious in her demeanor, and he kind of is constantly like poking at her to break the ice. And we see over the course of those little vignettes that she loosens up by the end, but it's he does draw it out of her. Her nature is not to be like him, that's just palling around being silly all the time, but it takes that prodding, that poking that he does constantly to kind of like, you know, spin around in circles a little bit, kind of.
I also think it's interesting that there are a couple times in this film when they're doing like the business of doing a funeral, and she is the one that is laughing and like bringing levity into it, like with the themed coffin at the beginning, which is absolutely ridiculous and very hilarious, and her brother are laughing about it and having a fun time. And then later when they're doing like the planning for the memorial service, and she just keeps laughing and keeps bringing this like levity to this really serious somber moment. And so I found that also to be really interesting, because her dad was the one that like pulled that out of her, and especially in that first moment she is the one that is able to like bring that out of her brother too, and is able to get him to laugh and have this moment of joy in what doesn't seem like a joyful moment. And so I think that that's interesting, to provide that contrast, because that's not normally what we would expect from Helen.
It is her coping mechanism, but it's also like this gut reaction that she has, that like maybe it's in there. She just, by circumstances and the people that she's around, it doesn't come out as often, but like that thread is in there that doesn't get to be pulled often enough, unless it's in these circumstances or with her father. I also just like found this film to be quite funny in some moments. Like you mentioned, there's the the very specific, like dry, deadpan sense of humor that comes out in her interactions, particularly with Stu. It comes out a little bit with her mother. A lot of the scenes with Mabel are actually like quite funny, and so I think that was something that was fascinating to experience watching this film about grief and loss and depression and anxiety is like it's really funny. And I was kind of shocked at these moments where I was like, I don't know if I should be laughing, but this is really funny, and can't help it.
Yeah,
Maybe
no,
it's my
I had the
survival
same
mechanism too.
experience. I thought that this was really funny, and I also just I don't know. I've grown up with animals. I've had animals my whole life,
Mm.
but it's been like dogs and cats. We had a rabbit when I was a kid. Like very like regular animals to have, but like having trained other animals, I'm like, okay, I get kind of what we're doing. It's obviously not the same thing. My animals weren't,
Are
hawks
not
that were trying
hunting
to
bunnies.
like, yeah, they're
Yeah.
non-affectionate species. Dogs are very affectionate. So, but I loved those moments because I know what it's like to train a dog that's just like not listening and doesn't know what to do. You don't have that bond yet. And so
Yeah.
I think it's funny watching somebody try and do these things, especially I've never seen somebody train a hawk before, so I don't know what you're supposed to do. So a lot of those little training moments I think were also humorous, just like even the juxtaposition of having a hawk in the middle of your university campus
Party.
housing. Like, what? I had so many questions about like the logistics of this. Like, what are we doing with this like dangerous animal in student housing? And so I loved all of those little moments that they're juxtapositions, and you maybe shouldn't have Mabel in this environment, but then that creates something that's funny and interesting for us to watch. So I don't know, I loved all of that. I loved the mechanics of how do you train a hawk.
And there's so many moments where you also put yourself in a third party observer. Like for most of the movie, like we are right in the seat of this roller coaster ride with Helen. And so I'm like, yeah, this is Mabel. She is a hawk. Please stop calling her a falcon, which is a great bit that they use throughout. But there's moments where you zoom out and you're like, this is kind of ridiculous. Like when she's at the party by I think one of her colleagues that she's
Yes.
invited to, and there's this interaction that happens, and then we zoom out to this almost like overhead shot of the
Mm-hmm.
party, and she's standing alone. And my first reaction was like, oh my god, this is really sad and this is really awkward because she's just standing there alone. But then you're also imagining if I were a party goer, just like there's the girl in the corner with her hawk standing by herself. What is happening here? It's kind of ridiculous but also really tragic and sad at the same time because you know that she feels so uncomfortable at this party. But then I'm also like, she kind of like is if like physically uncomfortable, so she like moves around a little bit and like walks 2 steps to the left and was like, well, here I am with my hawk at the party as everyone's like intermingling together. It's one of those moments where like it's fun because we are ping-ponging back with so many different emotions all at once as we are seeing how ridiculous the situation is, but also how uncomfortable and awkward this is. And also how really sad it is because all she has is her hawk at this party. And she's gonna go home with Mabel. And it's like there's so many moments like that um, throughout the film that I think are really fun.
Yeah, I also love the inclusion of her friend Christina, who I feel like
She's so
fills
great.
in as the person who doesn't know anything about hawks. And so there's so many little moments with her where I was like, yeah, man, I don't know what to do either. So, yeah, Christina, I'm learning with you. Let's learn about Mabel together. And like when she's when they're trying at first to get like Mabel to come and she just flies off and they're like chasing the string, like that was really funny and stressful all at the same time, but also I don't know what you would do in that moment either. And
Right?
how do you get your hawk out of the tree if the
Please.
hawk can't come? Like, what in the world? So I loved all of those situations that are completely unexpected because I haven't trained a hawk before. They were so funny and light. And yet, because Helen is in the middle of it, this is so serious and this is
Yes.
important and this is imperative. And I shouldn't be laughing at this maybe because Helen is in distress. And at the same time, it's a very funny moment. So I loved all of those complexities throughout this film, and the way that it really does force you to deal with these often conflicting emotions and these conflicting feelings all in one little scene.
Yeah. Yeah. It and the film does a great job of giving us just enough in all of those moments. Shout out to the editing. There's some really great moments multiple times where we see that Helen is running, chasing after Mabel. Mabel's now on a tree. Hard cut. It's now dark. And she's closing the door with Mabel in there of like, well, and we feel the hours and minutes of frustration that have gone by. And just imagining her being like, please, Mabel, come down from the tree. And I think that that's really great. Like we don't need to see those. It's funnier to cut from Mabel's in the tree to like, it is dusk now. And she is so tired and so exhausted by today's episode of Going Out with Mabel. Just great job with the editing, giving us, we don't need more. It's hilarious not knowing more and filling in the gaps ourselves.
And we don't need to know more. We know that Mabel got up in the tree and Mabel got out of the tree. And that's all that we needed to know to keep moving with the story. So I think not only is this film really restrained in like its use of emotion, but it's really restrained in what it shows us and what it doesn't show us. And I think that is really smart and really intentional. And in the moments though that we need to linger, it does. I think a lot of the being outside and in the forest or in the field, it's beautiful, and I really appreciate a lot of the shots that they have there. But I love that we just get to like linger outdoors for a little bit and just experience what that's like when Mabel is hunting in the forest. There's a bunch of shots of her just like flying through the trees and finding her prey, and then Helen kind of like chasing after her. And I love how long and indulgent those are, because we need to be in that moment for a little bit. So yeah, the editing is spot on to know when to cut away, but also when to linger in an emotion or in a thought.
Yeah. And I felt with Helen, this is why I hope if I get a bird when I lose somebody in my life, please stage the intervention, come and wash my coffee mugs for me, because I too felt the catharsis of the joy and the thrill and the adrenaline and the like feeling of freedom that she feels when she's tromping through the forest now with her bird, and like, okay, we're gonna do this again, like we're gonna try again. And the excitement of seeing Mabel chase another bird or a bunny, and then her finally be able to call Mabel back, like it is really exciting. And there's something about also being out of her apartment, which is ends up being really suffocating, which is like, again, great depiction of depression. But the freedom and kind of the like, oh, I can finally breathe now. I'm alone. I am in these beautiful hills in the countryside. And like, there's something so peaceful about those moments. Though she is running from her problems, there's a respite, there's a catharsis that is happening every time she's out there, and getting it to look out in the horizon that I also felt with her. So I'm like, shoot, I would also be shirking all my responsibilities. I'm like, I just want to get out there again with my bird at sunset, and let's go chase some bunnies, like I felt the freedom of that. And I think there was something healing in that for Helen to just be away from it all and to find that moment of peace, even if just momentarily.
Jen, if you get a bird, and you spend all of your time going and hunting with your hawk, I will help you wash your coffee mugs.
This is love. This is care. This is friendship. Well, while we're talking about that, I loved that scene with her friend, because we got to see earlier her mother and I think her brother show up and like make all of the comments and like express their concern in the way that they know how to, but is not what she needs most. It's like, it's often the way our family cares for us, which is like, it's so well intentioned, but like, you don't really understand how I'm wired. So like, you're saying all the wrong things, and it creates so much anxiety in her. But I love when the friend shows up, there's this unspoken, Do you need coffee? All right. I'm noticing you didn't wash your coffee mugs, but I'm just going to wash two for us. I'm going to make the coffee. And I'm going to ask you the question that gets at something that is more at the root of what you need to hear. And I'm everything else doesn't matter because I know that this is symptoms of a bigger thing. And also her willingness to be like, I'll pack, you write. And then the next moment we see that she's putting things into boxes as Helen can kind of be relieved of the burdens of having to juggle all of the logistics and can just focus on watching the old videos with her father and doing that process of writing the eulogy that she was putting off, but the presence of the friend being there for it, but also helping like lift this like burden and load logistically for her. Just there was such intimacy in the way that she knew exactly what she needed. So yeah, I loved that contrast between her family trying to love her and her friend ultimately knowing how to care for her in the way that she needed to know. Unspoken. So
Yeah.
good.
Oh,
So
it is so good.
I will also wash our coffee mugs. When you try
Yes.
and train a bird, I honestly will probably just sit there and laugh watching you train this bird
Here's the thing.
as you're
Birds are
processing through your
cool,
grief.
but man, I would not train a bird. Like if if you see me get a hawk, that's not me.
Okay.
Like
I don't know. When people go through hard times, they do things that
I
are out of
just
character,
I
Sarah. So,
that that would be so far out of character. Get
yeah.
a giant dog? Yes.
Yeah, this
That
is
is
true.
totally in character, and I would invest my whole heart into that dog. That would
Yes.
be normal. But man, a hawk, I don't know. I don't know what circumstances would get me to, you know what would solve this problem? A hawk.
More
Like
likely to get a hawk out of us too is probably me when I'm just spiraling.
I
So,
think so. Which is cool. I would come over, I'd be like, "Okay, you got a pet a hawk? That's cool. I'm going to go wash some dishes. It's fine.
yes,
I'm not
you
going
are
to
the right.
judge you
You
for
can
your
write
hawk."
this whole seminar thing that I apparently will have forgotten about to give at the exhibit. So,
Oh man, but I did love that moment with the friend. I think that that's such a powerful example of
yeah,
like friendship and care, especially because that comes after the party, and there's
yeah,
that like miscommunication and like the
mm.
when Helen is trying and she brings whatever stew made out of whatever Mabel caught, and the friend is like, "Oh, we already ate." So there's that like
We already
awkwardness
ate.
and like
Yeah,
there's that lack of connection there, and you can feel that distance there, and
yeah,
yet she continues to show up even though Helen is pushing everybody out. And so,
yeah.
the more dramatic way of this film is that, they would just like
Have a falling
stop
out.
being
Yeah.
friends basically, and the friend would
Hmm.
just be like, we don't get each other anymore. I'm done. Live your life. But
Yeah.
I love the tenderness and the care of, you're going through a lot, and I maybe don't understand what you're going through. I don't understand this stuff with Mabel, but you are my friend. And so I'm going to
Hmm.
come over and just help you without judgment. And
Yeah.
I really appreciated that.
Hmm. Yep. Yep. I'm gonna come. And
Mhm.
I also really appreciate too that the friend does this really interesting balance of like, have you started on your seminar thing yet? Because I know you might be prone to be forgetting those things. So she's helping try and help take care of the logistical things that she knows are important to her friend, that her friend's just neglecting during this really difficult time right now. But also, I really appreciate the friend is also willing to be really honest with her and ask some of the hard questions of, do we think we might be over identifying with Mabel? And obviously, Helen's not ready to face any of it. And she's like, no, I'm maybe, I don't know, whatever, I don't know. And the friend just lets that sit there because she knows that, like, just the question alone is more than enough. She doesn't have to press, she doesn't have to say, I actually think you are over identifying with Mabel. Just she's going to poke and prod at the right times and have that like radical candor with her when she needs to, but also knows when to just let it sit, let it simmer, let it cook, and revisit it again later and kind of ask the hard truths out of love to care for her friend, but not push too much. And I think that requires so much intimacy and knowledge of the other person and what they need moment to moment, which I thought was really neat to see. And the film's not really flashy about that, you know. It's just it's matter of fact and showing those moments, and then we're on to the next thing. And I think it's something that could be easily missed about the way that the friend is like really there for her in the ways that Helen needs most, more than her family knows how to care for her. Honestly,
There's also just a little moment once Helen starts to really get like wrapped up in Mabel, and she's on the phone with her mom, and her mom says, "Just don't get lost." And again, like it's a quick little thing, but I loved that line because there is so much care, and her mom is able to
yeah,
clock this in Helen that may like Helen probably doesn't realize about herself. And so it's just that tender little reminder of, I know you're doing this. Keep going with Mabel, do your thing, but don't get lost there. Don't lose yourself in this. And I thought that that was just a really beautiful little reminder.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Helen's not ready to hear it yet, so she's like, "Oh, someone's at the door. Gotta go. Bye."
Right.
but but it shows, to your point, yeah, that the mother also understands her daughter quite well and knows the tendencies, knows the trajectories, knows the path that we're on, which inevitably does happen. That actually is quite early in the film. That moment, it's when she first gets Mabel, and we get to see the full unfolding of that as well. Ah, so good.
It is so good.
This is a film that I feel like is has so much depth to it, but I think I really feel it could be easily kind of like passed by, or it unfolds and then you're like, oh well, that was kind of an interesting film about a girl and her brain. It's like I think there's so much depth and wisdom in this film that's written in and so intentionally designed and crafted that is so rich. That's in here.
Yeah, I think especially, you know, if you have struggled with depression, you'll probably see yourself in Helen. If you have a loved one or a friend who has struggled with depression,
Yeah.
then this would probably be a really good movie to just watch to be able to empathize. Because I mean, as a person who has gone through it, I
Yeah.
know what that feels like, but it's hard to communicate it to somebody who maybe hasn't experienced something like that. So
Yeah.
I think this is, we talk about it all the time on the podcast, but like movies are so effective in creating empathy. Like that's it's kind
Yeah.
of like the whole point of a movie is to empathize with the people on the screen and put yourself in their shoes. And so I think
Mm.
especially if you haven't experienced depression or you haven't experienced grief and loss like this I think is a brilliant look into what that can feel like. Obviously not everybody goes through things the same, but this is, I at least for me, like a really accurate portrayal of what depression feels like.
Mhm.
So I think that that's just brilliant. I feel like I usually don't experience that in movies that tackle these kind of subject. I'm usually
Yeah.
like, oh well, that was a little over dramatic, or you know, it was a nice try but didn't quite get there. But I think
Yeah.
this just feels so human and real and grounded, and just asking you to empathize with this person. And
Mhm.
yeah, I think it handles a very difficult subject really, really well.
Yeah. Yeah. With such intentionality in the details and such honesty in those details that it really feels like it's like a gosh, only someone that has experienced and walked through this could write it in this way. One last little shout out that I wanted to give that I thought was so emotional and so well constructed is when the first time we see Helen shed a tear. It's when she's in the cardboard box. And I remember when that scene was happening, I was like, oh my gosh, that is so pinpointed to the exact experience of like when you just want to like curl up in a ball and let everything around you in the world just like fade away. Like that is the time where she feels almost the most safe, is that like physical experience of being in a small space that she can finally, in the fetal position, finally even allow herself to feel and allow those cracks to begin to break forth open for the true emotions to come. And I thought that was really well done. And it's only after she's been running after over the course of the entire film that it's like, this finally has caught up with her. But it's that physical space with which that moment happens, I thought was so accurate and so well done. So just again, a shout out to the creators and writers of Ages for Hawk for being able to create such an honest portrayal of something that is experienced by so many, something that hits close to home for both of us. But again, it's like, gosh, it was shocking how accurate some of these moments were and those details that were so on point.
The other shout out that I would just love to give is the hawk who plays Mabel. Like, I don't know.
Where did they find this?
Right, like, again, I don't know hawks, okay? I've not interacted with a hawk. I've only seen them from afar. I don't I was amazed at what they were able to get out of
Yo.
this bird. I was like, I don't know if a bird can act, but I feel like this bird is acting. It was so great, and Mabel is so cool. I
Yeah.
wanted to keep like hanging out with her, and even like as a viewer, at first I'm like, "Oh girl. Oh Helen. You do not need a hawk right now, my lady. Like do not do this." But then the more time that we spent with Mabel, I'm like, "Oh, Mabel's really cool. I get it now." Like
Yeah.
I also want to hang out with Mabel cuz is she's just really cool. So let's keep hanging out with her. But I don't know how difficult it was, filming this predator. Obviously she's trained and everything, but like wow, just shout out to obviously the actress who plays Mabel, but then also like the trainers and everything, the camera people, everything that had to coordinate to capture Mabel and make her look so cool. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want a
And
hawk, but like I
expressive.
was like slightly tempted by this movie. It's too much work. I wouldn't know what to do with a hawk, but
No, I would be terrified for my literal life.
yeah.
um, but yeah, it was during the sequences where Mabel's flying through the forest that I really
Yes.
wondered, how did they do that? How did they do
Right?
that? I'm sure lots of um like effort and time into capturing the moments when they're happening and the like intuition to know, but especially in the forest because it's like a near like tracking shot from the side as Mabel's flying and the camera is I don't know what the camera is doing or how they achieve that, but it is like
Right.
seemingly moving through the trees as Mabel is also flying. I don't know how I don't know.
Yeah.
Movies
I
are magical, but
They
that was a
are.
moment where I was like, how did they do that? That was very impressive.
No, I thought the same thing. I like wrote down like how many takes did they have to do for this? Like
Yeah.
it was just man, it was so magical just watching her fly through this forest. I was like,
Hmm.
yeah, you go, girl. You spread your wings and fly, Mabel. We're proud of you.
Yeah. I'm so proud of Mabel. uh I also found it fascinating. This is like a small little detail. But when she's buying Mabel, she sees two birds and then she is supposed to get the other one and she said this isn't my bird, and I thought that was such a fascinating like foreshadowing now with hindsight on like that strange unexplainable emotional connection that like a lot of people that when they buy their dogs or their cats they often have that same feeling of like I just felt like this was mine, this is for me, this is the one that we were supposed to bring home. And I thought that was a fascinating little moment of her trusting her intuition, her trusting what she needed and following her gut in that way. So it was a very funny moment. She's like, no, that's not it. That's not my girl. But in hindsight, now knowing the journey that they go on together and the trust that is required for the two of them to build with each other, that was like a fascinating little, like magical moment of intuition of the journey that she was about to go on that she didn't even know yet at the time.
Mm-hmm. And so relatable,
And so funny.
like every time we've gotten
No,
a new dog, it's been like, nope, that that one.
that one.
That
I don't want any other one but that one.
nope. I
Figure it
only have
out.
eyes for you. Only
Yeah.
you, Mabel. I
Yeah.
also love that she doesn't name Mabel right away because she
Oh,
doesn't know
yeah.
her yet. And so that's how I've always felt too. Like anytime like you get a new animal, it's like,
Mm,
oh my gosh, what is its name? And I'm like, I don't know yet. I haven't gotten to know this dog or cat yet. Like, how would I know what their name is? So there are so many little things like that. Like, I've never owned a hawk, I've never owned a bird before, but
mhm.
as a pet owner, I was like, oh, I get these things.
Yeah.
I understand. I can empathize with this to a degree.
Yeah. It's so good. And then she's like, it means lovable. I'm like, oh,
Yes,
all
your
right.
non-affectionate species bird.
It's so fun. There's so many funny moments throughout where like the doctor's like, oh, are you in a relationship? No, no. I do have Mabel though. Is Mabel your, no, she's my hawk. Like,
I
wow,
also
got a lot to
I
unpack
also
here.
love all of the like people at the school that don't understand and they're like, "Oh, it's your hobby." And she's like, "I don't have a hobby. I have a hawk." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"You go, girl."
Tell him. Oh, it's so good. Well, yeah, this film really worked for us. There's a lot to love here. It's such a grounded, understated story that is so intentional and so deeply human, so accurate in portraying many different dimensions of our characters. So we can't wait for more people to watch this movie. I'm just so glad we got to watch this movie and talk about it, and hopefully bring more eyeballs to get to experience this type of story that has such intention. So this is our review and discussion for Ages for Hawk. We hope more people get to watch it. Let us know if you got to experience this movie, what your thoughts are about it as well. But yeah, in the meantime, we'll be back here on the feed with more content for you soon. So hope everyone has an amazing week, and we'll talk again soon. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Movies and Us. We are part of the Movie Archer podcast network, so check out moviearcher.com to learn more.
Our name sums it up. We're all about movies and the powerful ways we can connect with each other and the world around us. This podcast is about all of us and our shared stories.
You can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you tune to your favorite shows. Drop us a rating review, letting us know your thoughts about today's episode.
Connect with us on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at Movies and Us Pod, or email us at moviesanduspod@gmail.com. Check out our website, andusmedia.co, for the latest on Movies and Us and our other podcast, TV and Us.
We hope you have an amazing week, and we can't wait to see y'all very soon.